Okay, so a quick discussion of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a large secondary group that is designed to perform tasks efficiently. So if you think back to what a secondary group is, it's a group that has a specific goal or task. Okay, so Max Weber, a lot of his studies were around based on bureaucracies, and I just wanted to kind of make sure that we were all on the same page and understanding what bureaucracy is. Okay, so sometimes bureaucracies can feel heartless and undemocratic. However, they are there to kind of attempt to be as fair and rational as possible. So when we talk about this term rationality, it is the attempt to reach maximum efficiency. Okay, so rationality is this idea that we have we want to be as efficient as possible. And most organizations today are bureaucratic in nature due to this piece of rationality. And through rationality comes standardization. Okay, so standardization is the behavior or products in nature that kind of come about to make things efficient. And when we talk about that standardization, we can see this in organizations that are bureaucratic because regardless of the situation, most everyone will be treated equally or the same. But even like if you go to Starbucks and you order, I drink plain coffee, so I'm like a caramel macchiato, okay? Like if you order a caramel macchiato, you know what you're going to get, right? Regardless of the Starbucks that you go to, they should all come out exactly the same or at least similar, hopefully. But the reason is because there's a standardization of how that caramel macchiato is made. Now, if you go to another coffee shop, your caramel macchiato might not taste exactly the same. But there's a standardization that's placed there. Your book talks about McDonaldization and George Ritzer's work related to that. And it really is kind of this idea of, he used McDonald's as an example because the standardization that takes place at McDonald's has kind of shifted into pretty much every fast food or organizations like that, right? So that when you walk into a McDonald's, when you walk into a Burger King, when you walk into a Starbucks, when you walk into a Target, whatever it is, you have this expectation of this is how it's going to be. It's a standardization. It becomes efficient not only for the businesses, but also for the customers. Okay, so just kind of keeping that in mind. Now, what I want you to take away from Weber's discussion of bureaucracies is that there are some characteristics that he basically said that ideally bureaucracies have these. So he referred to them as the ideal type bureaucracies. Now, remember what we learned about ideal culture and real culture. Ideal exists and it's kind of what it should be, but it isn't necessarily always how it is. So recognizing this in relationship to bureaucracy is extremely important too, okay? Bureaucracies will have these characteristics in some way, ideally, okay? So I'm gonna get off of that so that it's not blocking. Okay, so this is a graph that I've made in the past that I wanted to kind of share, not a graph, a chart, a smart chart, right? To kind of break down the characteristics, and this way it would keep me on track and it would give you a visual other than just me. Okay, so when we're looking at this, bureaucracies have a goal and they're just attempting to meet it. And the way that they're attempting to meet the goal is through these ideal characteristics. Now, the first one is specialization. So what exactly is specialization? Each individual, each member of the bureaucratic structure is assigned a specialized task or role, okay? So there's a specialty, right, in each thing. Like if you go to the DMV, it's very bureaucratic in nature. You go in, you have a specific reason for being there. You have to tell the person at the front desk that's their specific job, what you're there for, and then that individual is then going to give you a ticket with a number and a letter so that you go back to the appropriate person who can handle that, right? So they have specialized individuals for licenses. They have specialized individuals for learner's permits. They have specialized individuals for registration, right? All of those different types of things. Okay, doesn't mean that they can't do more than one job, but they're kind of specialized in whatever they do. And the reason is because there's a technical competence. Okay, all members are expressly trained and qualified for their specific roles within the organization. Okay, so when you go into an organization, the individuals who are completing the job, their specialty, they are trained and they know what they're doing, right? Or should know what they're doing, right? There's that competence that relates to that, okay? So again, like here at Coastal, think about it. Each of your instructors is specialized, right? They may teach, for instance, right now I'm teaching ACA as well as sociology. But I'm like, they may be specialized in a certain field. So their specialization is there. And the reason that they are able to teach that is because they have the competence, the technical competence to do it. They have been trained and know what they're doing. Okay. Hierarchy. What exactly is a hierarchy? We've learned about social statuses and a social hierarchy, right? It places us in a different position. Like in our classroom, my status is teacher, your status is student. I am higher in the hierarchy, the level, right? Of status and position. So bureaucracies always feature supervisory levels with subordinates, right? So there's always various levels of higher ranking individuals. So you start with that specialization that you're in based on your technical competence, and then you have a boss who has their own responsibilities and so forth and so forth. And above in the hierarchy, there's a possibility that that individual who may be supervising you actually doesn't know how to do your job because of the specialization piece, right? They're not responsible for your job. They're just responsible for you and making sure that you're doing your job, okay? The fourth one is rules and regulations. These are formal rules and regulations very much exist in order to kind of keep everything efficient, right? It's more efficient if everybody knows the expectations and everybody follows the same expectations based on whatever their technical competence and specialty is, right? So for each specialization, for each job, there are these specific rules and regulations that they must follow. They're meant to make the operations, again, more standard and predictable. So taking us back to the DMV, when you go in, they ask you what you're there for. And then they also ask what, if you have the certain documents. The reason is if you don't have those documents, they're not even going to let you waste their time going back, right? To talk to somebody, because the rules are in place to say, if you don't have these things, we can't help you, right? They can't bend the rules to allow you to be able to do what you came for if you don't have the right things. Okay, so that is following the rules gives us that standard, the standardization that then becomes more efficient. That efficiency, of course, that part of the efficiency can then make it not very efficient for the customer, right? The individuals who are interacting with the organization may not feel that it's very efficient because it's not efficient to them, but it really is about the rules. And that's where impersonality comes in, okay? Impersonality in a bureaucracy is ultimately the idea that rules come before the people, right? You can't bend the rules. No individual receives special treatment. You have to follow the rules. And this is why it feels like they really don't care about me, or they don't really see me in the situation. Now, I will say most bureaucracies have kind of like this way to kind of do things, informal, unwritten norms that can exist where rules can be bent. Like, for example, here at Coastal, the rules and regulations that are a standardization is based around the attendance policy, right? If we think about this, the attendance policy exists that says that you cannot miss more than 12.5 hours of class time. That is a rule. And if you miss it, every instructor that you have on campus will withdraw you. That is the rule and the regulations. Now, that may seem very impersonal. However, the informal norm that exists gives the instructor the opportunity to let you back in, okay? Which allows us to kind of work around, right? As a workaround. So all bureaucracies have ways of workarounds. However, if you don't get the workaround, it can feel very impersonal, okay? But impersonality has to happen, because without it, it would be way too easy to bend the rules all of the time. And then there really aren't any rules. And then it's not efficient at all, okay? And the last characteristic that Weber talks about is formal written communication. So what exactly is that? When we talk about the formal written communication, it really is about how the organization documents pretty much everything. So thinking about this being a large secondary group, thinking the difference between primary and secondary groups, your primary groups are small and informal. They're really close relationships. And when you're communicating with those individuals, there's never really typically this formal way of making sure that everybody's aware. But I think about like when we talk about pretty much all secondary groups that you're part of, word of mouth is not typically the way that information gets shared. There is some sort of formal way that information is shared so that everyone has the opportunity to get that information. I even think about like my son's baseball team. We have an app, right? To where the coach would send all messages out through the app, as well as through email in case you didn't check the app, but it was a formal way of knowing exactly what's going on. Here at Coastal, I post announcements in the course. Whether you look at it or not is on you, but that way everyone has the opportunity to get that information. Email is a way to be able to track, to be able to contact everyone. And then me as an instructor, I would keep my emails, things that are important that I may need to refer to back in time, and it helps me to remain efficient, okay? So it documents, depending on the organization, such as memos, emails, all of those are the heart of really like the heart and the core of an organization, because that information is shared and it's how it gets from one person to another. Because the larger the organization, the only way that we know that everybody has access to the information is for it to go out in some sort of formal way. So again, in like this class, I will post an announcement. Even if I announce something in class, it will typically also then be announced in the course as well, to guarantee that everybody gets that information. Okay, so this is really the thing that I want you to understand the most about bureaucracies. And this relates to the question that may be on your test, right? This would just be helpful for you, okay? Let me know if you have any questions, and have a great day.